Hi guys, this is Kurt, Oscar November 7, Oscar Fox Fox. This is already the 10th episode of the series From Zero to Hero with the Hermes Lite and the Thetis software. And today's episode has all to do with issues you might encounter, like having no audio output, you hear nothing coming out of your Thetis and Hermes Lite, and also dropped frames. They're mixed together, they are intermingled together, these two subjects, so I'll touch all of them. So first of all, the first thing I want to recommend you to do is check that you indeed have some audio output that is working on the device that you want to use for the output of your Hermes Lite. So go to one of my YouTube videos, click the play button and just have a listen if the audio is coming out of the speaker that will be used for the audio output of the Thetis software. From there on, if this is working, normally Thetis should work as well. And what you need to do next is just check a lot of things in the front end of the Thetis software. First of all, just be sure and be aware that maybe you're into PTT mode. Okay, it can be. If you have an external PTT key on your Hermes Lite, you might be PTTing and you don't hear anything. Now, just a little thing that I want to explain to you is, let me just bring this window here to the front. Okay, if you look at the Hermes Lite right here, okay, you will see in the front of the Hermes Lite you have something like key PTT. This is a 3.5 millimeter jack. Just connect a 3.5 millimeter jack in there. If you have an old headset that is broken, cut it into pieces and take out the wires at the end, stick that 3.5 millimeter jack in there, and you will see that one lead will give you a key for CW and the other one is going to do the PTT. So in that case you can eventually just add a external PTT key, but sometimes maybe the PTT key has been engaged while you're turning it on and you hear nothing. Okay, so just a little tip. The next thing you need to do is check if you have eventually muted. If it's muted, of course you won't hear anything. And if you mute it, you quit and you start it up again, it will be still muted, so the mute button will be still engaged and you hear nothing. The next thing that is a very common problem is that people, they play around with all the sliders, the buttons, and they put the AGC gain to -20, just to the minimum level. Now, if it's at the minimum level, you won't hear anything because the automatic gain control is turned up completely, so you won't have any output. Okay, I recommend to right click it until you've got that green arrow here that's in the slider. That means it's going to automatically adjust to the ground floor noise. If still you don't hear anything, go to setup and just make sure that if you go in the setup, my computer is a little bit slow because I'm doing the recording here, and go to options. No, not here. There you go. I think I need to go to DSP. There you go. And then you go to ALC and just be sure that this here is at a level of, for example, 0. This will actually position the automatic gain control, the green one here, to an adequate level. And if you put it too high or too low, I think if you put it too low, you won't have any receive either. So or another way is just to right click again and then just put it all the way to the right to be sure that you have receive. The next thing that you need to do is check if you are in the right mode. I know that probably your Thetis is not looking the same as mine, but basically just check that you are maybe not in a digital mode, or maybe in a both like CW in a very small bandwidth. You won't hear anything too. So just be sure that you are in USB, LSB, AM, FM, whatever, SAM, whatever mode that you're going to use. And also make sure that you have the right bandwidth. So I'll put mine on 4K, okay? And what happens then if you if you have it very, very small, very narrow, of course you won't hear either anything as well. Also, the next thing I want to be sure of is that you have VAC engaged. Okay, so VAC right now is in green. And also another cause that might be giving you trouble is because you have NR2 engaged and you are using the AI version of NR2. If you right click the button here, you will go to NR2 right away, to the DSP NR2. Let's just going to load it. And I'm in gamma mode, but if you use the trained mode, this is the AI filtering system. It's going to cut out the noise floor completely. You will hear nothing. It's like FM mode and you hear nothing. So when this one is engaged and you're on a frequency where there is nothing happening, you might have no audio output coming out of the speakers as well. So the next thing, just check that maybe your squelch is engaged. So just make sure it is not green, and you can go over the different levels and put the slider all the way to the left to be sure that the squelch is not engaged. Also turn off RX equalizer, because if you turn on the equalizer, maybe in the equalizer settings you have turned down the equalizer receive to the -12 dB, and that might also cause that you don't hear anything. Okay, and now we go in the VAC. So let me just right click VAC. And one thing I want to point out, if you're going to the VAC controls, be sure that output to VAC is not engaged, okay? Because if this is engaged, you will have no output as well. And also be sure that you enabled the VAC number 1. Another issue that might be the cause is that either your input device or your output device is not matching the sample rate right here. This is a Windows settings. It has nothing to do with the Thetis software. So if I go and right click on the little speaker icon in your taskbar of your window and you go to sound settings, I will just go all the way down and go to more sound settings. It will bring up this window here, okay? And when you have this window, you just find the device that you will be using to play the output of the Thetis software. In this case, it's the speakers here. Right click it, go to properties, and be sure that when you go to advanced, that the bit sample rate here is matching the sample rate that is printed right here. If there is a mismatch, you won't hear anything. Nothing will come out of your speakers. It goes both ways with the input and the output. So here I will use my FDUS microphone, go to properties and go to advanced. Make sure that you have 48,000, they match. Now imagine that this one is configured to 96,000 like this, okay? I will not have any output as well, okay? So I cannot do it here, but I won't have any output. It won't give, it will affect also the output, not only the input, but also the output. Because if there is a mismatch between the input device and the output device, it won't work, okay? So very important to know that. Another thing that could be the cause, and this is the cause in this example here, the RX is all the way down. So I'm gonna just turn it up and you're gonna see gradually. Okay. Let me mute it. So you will gradually increase the RX, and if the RX gain has been turned down, it's like the AGC gain, but over here, it will have, of course, also an effect on your receive. Maybe you might have issues with dropped frames. Okay, and I'm having some drop frames. I'm on purpose. I did not connect my Ethernet network. I am on my Wi-Fi because I want to show you what drop frames look like and what is caused. Before we do that, please go to audio. Okay, options, and when you go to options, audio options, make sure that this feature is enabled. Overflow, underflow, click to clear. What does this do? Okay, this here is going to be able to give you the possibility to reset the information of the dropped frames that that are mentioned right here under the VAC1. So basically, when there are dropped frames, you will see these red and green dots appearing. Okay. If I click here, it will disappear. It will actually clear out the notification that I have dropped frames. If I right click the VAC, so then it will bring me to the setup menu, straight to the VAC input here. And here you can see and control the overflow and underflows. What are dropped frames? Now you can see that I just suddenly have one dropped frame here in receive. So these here, underflow in this row here, has to do with receive, and the overflow here has to do with receive. Okay. Now, if you're transmitting and you have overflows in this row here, and you have underflows in this row here, it actually is affecting your transmit. So this could be another cause why you are not hearing anything. One thing I want to point out that is ultimately important is go to General, go to FW set, and be sure that you don't have the sample rate, that's the bandwidth, okay? The frequency width set is the bandwidth that you will receive in one go. So if I'm zooming out, okay, if I put it at 48,000, you will see that my scope is not going to be able to display as much of a bandwidth, okay? The thing is, if I zoom out completely, okay, and my computer is very, very slow, you will see that the bandwidth will be quite narrow, okay? It goes from 28, what is it, 420 up to 2860, okay? So only 40 kilohertz. So if I go back to setup, okay, I can change the sample rate, okay? And when I change the sample rate, I do not recommend you at all to go to 384,000. 192,000 is okay for the Hermes Lite. If you try 384,000, you might bump into problems. The processor of the Hermes Lite is not capable of handling it, especially if you're going to use pure signal. Okay, so 192,000 is the maximum sample rate I recommend. Let me go back to audio VAC1. Okay, so basically, what happens is that the connection and the data that is being transferred between either, let me put this aside, the data that is being transferred between your computer and the Hermes is quite high. So it needs and requires a 1 gigabit Ethernet connection. So you can always go to your Ethernet settings. So if you have your Ethernet, and you can always go here in your Windows and check that you indeed have 1000 megabit on your network card. Now I have it connected, but I'm not using the network. I'm doing this on purpose. I'm using my Wi-Fi connection because I want to actually create and generate dropped frames. And as these dropped frames, they increment, you will be notified, and you can always click it away in the front end of your Thetis software. So you can always keep an eye if there are new dropped frames forming or not. Now, on purpose, I have connected myself to the Wi-Fi network, and I'm using a Asus gaming router. And the Asus gaming router is known to be very good. There are other gaming routers. I'm not only affiliated to Asus, but if you have a gaming router and you have Wi-Fi 6, you need to check that, first of all, your computer is able to support Wi-Fi 6. The gaming router that I have is capable of doing 4 gigabits per second on the 5 gigahertz band. So if you have a Wi-Fi connection that is only 2.4 gigahertz, you won't be able to use your Hermes Lite over the Wi-Fi for sure. You need to have a 5 gigahertz network connection, and preferably a very high speed with very low latency. So the Thetis software and Hermes Lite is very, very vulnerable and very sensitive to latency, to packet loss, and to bandwidth throttling and bandwidth issues. So if you bump into these problems of having lost packets, always first thing to do is to connect a UTP cable straight from your Hermes Lite to your computer and debug from there. Okay. Also, be aware that Windows, I already told this in a previous video, Windows actually has a automatic feature enabled in the Windows 11, Windows 10, which is called network throttling. Okay, so apparently Windows will put the Ethernet card in a sleep state for a fraction of a second, and this causes serious packet loss on your connection with the Hermes Lite, even that you have a straight connection with the cable. If you want to get rid of this issue, go to General, go to Hardware Select, okay, and enable this feature. But before you do so, this will do the hack in the registry of your Windows. But before you click here, be sure that you have started the Thetis software in administration mode, because you will not be able to do it under the normal user privileges. So you need to start your Thetis software in administration mode, and once you enable it, you go out of your Thetis software and restart your computer, because the information will be saved in your registry, but will only be enabled and will affect your computer only after restart. Okay. Okay, dropped frames. This is an important one, and I want to touch this. You can see that I have dropped frames here in receive. Now, as you can see, I'm using my Wi-Fi. I am 2 meters away from my Asus router, and I have Wi-Fi 6 capability on my Asus laptop here. So I'm using right now a very high-speed Wi-Fi network connection, and still I'm having some dropped frames. Now, these dropped frames that you're seeing right here are not going to be a serious problem. But if you see these dropped frames incrementing dramatically, it means you have a serious issue, because then you need to definitely go to a wired connection and make sure that your network card is indeed working at 1000 megabit at 1 gigabit per second. Another thing that I have encountered that I want to spare you from this issue is, for example, when I was operating my Hermes Lite in Thailand, I had an antenna that was like 6-7 meters away from the shack and running about 300 watts, and I had serious issue of RFI. Now, how does it manifest? How do you see that you have RFI? Well, you will start to have dropped frames that increment dramatically when you start to go into TX mode. And the overflows here in this row here and the underflows will increment dramatically. And then when you transmit, people will say that your audio is breaking up. You can also do a monitor here. So when you monitor here and you TX and you hear that you're breaking up, it means that you have lost packets. So you can actually hear your own transmission by doing so. But if you have a RFI issue, you need to change your network cable to a shielded cable. That's the first thing to do. Get a couple of these ferrite clip-ons. That will also help. Get some ferrite rings. Do I have a ferrite ring here in the vicinity? I don't think so. But take a ferrite ring and coil up everything around that ring. That might also resolve the issue. But the phenomena that you need to take to pay attention to is actually when you go into transmit mode, suddenly you see all these underflows and underflows and overflows climbing up in the list here. And then when you go into RX mode, they continue, because what happens, these packets are being queued next to each other, and because it cannot get through, it's throttling and it's in the queue, and also the receive will be affected. So in that case, you just turn off the VAC, turn it on again, or eventually you take another device, okay, and then you turn it on again, and then you see if it starts to increment. And if it does not increment only when you start to TX, well, you know it has to do with RFI issues, okay? So this is an important issue that you need to know. Now, if you change a device like I'm doing right now, an input device here, you can see that when I change the input device, it will affect the overflow. When I change the output device, it will affect the underflow over here, and vice versa here. Okay. You can play around also with buffer latency. That's also a possibility. And one thing that might also be a cause of dropped frames is going to DSP options, and you might change these parameters here, but it will also affect your audio quality when you go into TX mode. Okay, so they all have to do with latency, and you know, it will create latency, but it will also affect the buffering and all that kind of stuff. So that's basically it. I know it's a 20-minute video, but I need to explain you in details. If you guys might have an idea of another cause that you don't have a output of audio coming out of your Thetis software, note it down in the comments, so I will put them in my description of the video here and add them as an add-on for debugging your Thetis software. One thing that I can also recommend, I didn't mention it in the beginning of the video, is restart your computer or restart Thetis. So sometimes a restart can do magical things. 73s, and leave a comment if you like the video, if you want any subject to be addressed. Also leave this in the comments. I will be very happy to share and educate you on the Thetis software so you really become a professional. ON7 OFF, off the key.